Yeah, look, I mean, I think, identifying Donald Trump as really being a pioneer in injecting gender ideology into the mainstream, where he was having men compete against women in his beauty pageants. I think that's totally fair game, because he's now campaigning saying the opposite, that he doesn't think that you should have men competing in women's things like athletics.
And for more, I want to bring in Charles Moran. He's the president of the Log Cabin Republicans here with me in the studio. These are DeSantis's first comments on this video. What do you make of his reaction?
Well, just hearing his opening words talking about injecting gender ideology into the debate, the opening lines of that ad that his campaign retweeted have President Trump addressing the nation after the Pulse nightclub shooting. I don't know how addressing a national tragedy just miles from Governor DeSantis' then congressional district is injecting gender ideology. Look, it's very clear, and we're seeing it from across the conservative spectrum. Everyone agrees that this ad was misdirected, it was misplanned, and it was not setting the right tone.
There's Charles Moran, president or head of the Log Cabin Republicans, and he's on Ron DeSantis over that ad that we were talking about last week. That was, let's keep it real, it's pretty horrific in the way they talk. It's causing some divisions, because this is where I'm confused. Again, the head of the Log Cabin Republicans is trying to figure out how it is that a Republican is actually hating and putting out homophobic ads. That's their brand, bro. There's some more recap of what is that was going on.
I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens.
If Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses.
That is correct.
In the future, can transgender women compete in Miss Universe?
Yes. Make America great again. Psych!
Resistance.
Congratulations, Ron DeSantis. Mission accomplished. You win.
So that's the ad that ruffled a bunch of feathers, including from Charles Moran here, that was on CNN talking about it. But the fractures have begun, because anybody that's connected now with Ron DeSantis, who again is running for president, is now finding themselves being called homophobic within the Republican Party. I'm completely confused, but let's let him keep talking. Maybe he can clear this up.
Governor DeSantis' ad paints a very broad stroke, going after people like Caitlyn Jenner, people going after a drag queen named Lady Maga. These are not the problems that the conservative movement has typically been focused on, that a lot of the Republicans are focused on. This ad was so misdirected towards what the real threat is, and the response from Governor DeSantis there was a total sidestep. He didn't address it. He didn't even address some of the most important things that were in that video, and he missed an opportunity of something that brings all Americans together, definitely conservatives, around protecting women's sports, protecting women's spaces, preventing gender transition, permanent gender transition below the age of 18.
Those are the things we care about, not everything else that you're actually saying that we shouldn't exist, and how dare we have any rights in this country. Who has been saying that from the Republican side? I have no idea, Jordan, but he's totally confused. But the good news is these fractures have begun, and there's more coming from another group. But first, the Log Cabin Republicans' departure.
I mean, there's no real sympathy for them. They should know, and I think deep down they do know what that party is and what that party represents. We've seen attacks from Republican presidential candidates, Republican members of Congress, Republican Supreme Court justices on LGBTQI plus equity for years. Mitt Romney, is part of his platform, had a plank in his campaign that he was calling for a constitutional amendment to codify marriages between one man and one woman nationwide. And this is after some states had legalized it, but some hadn't, and we didn't have Obergefell until a couple more years. Granted, he lost, and thankfully he lost, and now we're seeing a point where, yes, there is some bipartisan support for marriage equality in Congress, but generally, and especially at the top levels of the Republican Party, they are happy to use the LGBTQI plus community for cannon fodder. They're happy to throw them under the bus because it divides and it pits people against one another, and that's how they campaign. They want people to humiliate and ridicule marginalized communities, people who are politically powerless, and that is how they campaign and build a base. That this person pretends like he can't see that and has an organization to run cover for the Republicans, no sympathy.
It's crazy because there's others that run cover, and this is where some of the fractures come from. There's a group called Gays Against Groomers. Gays Against Groomers. Because they're going off of that thought process from this one party who says anybody that's within the community is a groomer. But still, I guess they have to fight that fight. But now, Caitlyn Jenner, who they also mentioned because she appeared in that ad there, now she's had it with anyone associated with Ron DeSantis as well. This is what's going on because David Leatherwood was a part of this conversation back and forth on Twitter. He says there is a major difference between regular gay people, this is back on July 2nd, who love America and alphabet extremists who push radical woke ideology. Clearly, Ron DeSantis doesn't understand the difference. Thank God Trump does. There's some differences apparently. Caitlyn Jenner jumped on it. She said, I simply cannot be affiliated with Against Groomers, which is the handle for that particular group. Despite the work they do, I 99% support because Jamie, I guess the head of it, essentially begging my organization to co-brand, amplify, and pay for 50% of the Pride Month ad, the leader being on payroll for DeSantis and so vitriolically anti-Trump. She should step down. So there's battles lines. Caitlyn Jenner doesn't like anyone associated with Ron DeSantis because of the way his approach, specifically with that ad. Now, more of the irony, he's pushing that kind of ad because he needs to find some kind of separation from Donald Trump because remember, his whole political life nationally is about being a baby Trump. Now he's got to find something to separate himself. And bro, it's not working. There's more because Caitlyn also said this. She says, not the draft that you sent my team, some highly relevant omitted information. You think you can't play it both ways. Because now look, David Leatherwood is also, he's talking about his departure from GAG is directly related to the founder's outspoken support for DeSantis in light of his recent ad that is extremely anti-gay. He goes on to talk about how he actually respects people and their opinions because none of that means anything because they have to find some small division lines because I'm still trying to figure out what is about DeSantis's ad. They explained it, but what it is about DeSantis' ad that offended them when everything else they say is very similar to that ad and they weren't offended. Or maybe they are and it's all within their own smaller circles and these meetings that they have and maybe they're trying to find some kind of lane here. Or they just know that this is one good way to separate themselves from Ron DeSantis because he doesn't appear to be doing all that well. You got last thoughts, Jordan?
I think it shows the problem DeSantis is going to have when he gets closer and closer to the primaries. He wants to make his campaign about culture war issues. He wants to make his campaign about, attacking the LGBTQI plus community, doing things like book bans. All of those things aren't really going to play well because you even have some people who are Republican, I guess, who don't like it. And it doesn't really affect people's material needs. At the end of the day, that's just going to help, I guess. On social, you're going to rile up some part of your base, but they're not really going to be as motivated as somebody like Trump or maybe another candidate who can come in, talk about issues that's going to help them pay the bills, help people survive, help people keep food on the table, which is really what motivates a lot of voters. So with the loss of abortion as like the driving factor for single issue voters, this isn't going to be as an effective replacement. It's just going to rile up the crazies. And unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of real world consequences.
Maybe what they're trying to say is, Ron, you're supposed to do this for the fringe voters. Maybe they will vote, maybe they will. But also, once we get to the general, we have to start appealing to regular Americans because this is all craziness. Don't you know the game? Apparently, he's still learning it.